day, I just remember hearing my husband say something, and it changed my life. And he said, I want a divorce.
Out of the blue.
And I remember, out of the blue. Yoga is not going to help you out of that. Social media is the truth that people put out, and it might not even actually be true.
Where is the balance in life?
When you search on Instagram, TikTok, even YouTube about wellness, what you find is a lot of stuff about weight loss, yoga, meditation. And is that good? Well, we'll get into that today. My guest on today's show is Natalie Mullin. She's a certified wellness educator and someone who has lived experience, allowing everything to take priority other than the things that actually matter to her. She's also very passionate about helping ambitious but stressed women to find balance. This is Dear Fopsy, a show about stories of resilience and notes on love. And today, Natalie and I get into so much about this topic of wellness.
So how are you doing today, Natalie?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I was thinking of that basic question, and I was like, as a wellness person, do you feel like we should be answering that question more honestly, or it depends on who you're talking to? Because like if someone asks you, how are you doing, how honest should you really be to them?
You know what? That's interesting. I think it depends on who you're talking to, because if you're just at Tim Hortons and you're just ordering a coffee and the person's asking you how you're doing, and then you respond, actually, I'm so depressed right now. I'm going through a really hard time, right? They're like, whoa. I was just trying to be polite. But, with people that you have some sort of relationship with, I think it is important to kind of let down your guard and even just check in with yourself. How are you doing? I think a lot of times we just default to, oh, I'm good. Like something actually really bad could have just happened. Yeah. And you're still answering, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, because you didn't even do a check-in with yourself to take that pause. And so I think when someone asks you that, before you even respond, it's actually an indicator to you, you know what, take a pause and really assess, how are you feeling? And if you're not feeling optimal, it's okay. The default, you don't have to go to the default answer of, I'm doing well. You can say, today's a little hard for me, but I'm pushing through. Like you can still be optimistic, right? Because you don't necessarily want to offload and put all your problems on somebody. Again, it depends on the level of relationship you have with them. Yeah. But I think when we are more vulnerable and are more authentic in our responses, it actually allows people to connect with us more. And they might relate and say, okay, you're not feeling the best. What happened? Can I support you? Or sending you strength, sending you energy. And then they know how to better respond, right? So I think that's really important to do that check-in.
Thank you for the thorough answer. And I was just thinking, as you said, about like depending on who you're talking to, your answer should be different. I remember one time one of my friends who was super pregnant was asking me about something, and it was like a really stressful thing. I mean, she did ask, but given I unloaded so much, I was like, should I have gone in that much detail? Just knowing how stressed she is about her own life at the moment, and just being aware of like where the person is at and if they can really handle as much as you're unloading on them is a really brilliant way to put it. Thank you for answering. But for people who don't know you, I just kind of dove into it. So let's get a bit of an introduction. How do you introduce yourself to people? What do you do? And how did you get here? What's your story?
Yeah. So my name is Natalie Mullin. Professionally, I'm a certified wellness educator, coach, and speaker. Personally, I'm just a lover of life. I love people. I love exploring. I love learning. But you probably want to know about the professional side of me. So I'll go back to that for a second. And I just love supporting people in their wellness journey, helping them to achieve balance and joy and rest in their lives. And I work primarily with women, just looking at how can they make changes to their life to establish boundaries, to overcome imposter syndrome, to build self-confidence, self-love, or even just things that are affecting their wellness challenges. I am a support and accountability for women executives and also for women solopreneurs who are going through those situations and need support.
Amazing. Such an incredibly thorough introduction. Before this call, you shared an episode you were recently on with me, a podcast you were on, and a line you said just stuck with me, and I just want to talk about it some more. You were saying that if you've reached rock bottom, yoga and teas won't fix it. And I was like snapping so hard, and I was like, yes. Everything on TikTok, on YouTube is showing all the girlies getting their makeup done, getting their nails done, and like doing relaxation. And I'm like, I guess a part of like taking care of your physical body can be helpful, But like when you really are at rock bottom, are those the priorities, and like where do you go from there in terms of taking care of yourself?
Yeah, I love talking about this because as a wellness educator, I have spent a lot of time disrupting what people think of when they think of wellness. So there is a very common narrative that it has to do with yoga, it has to do with nutrition, it has to do with movement and the body. And this
Mm-hmm.
is all definitely a part of wellness. However,
Mm-hmm.
there are other aspects to wellness that are more internal and are based on our mindset and encompass things like our purpose, our spirituality, our mindset. And I think a lot of times we don't think about that when we think about wellness. But when wellness is talking about your overall well being. So when you go through a very difficult situation in life, and everybody has different reasons for why they might go through something traumatic or something that is an obstacle for them to overcome or something that literally changes their world and flattens them, yoga is not going to help you out of that because you have to go back to your mindset and you have to deal with, if you're dealing with depression, if you're dealing with um false beliefs about yourself, if you're dealing with having to reprogram your thoughts, this is all governed by your mindset. So yoga can help. Yoga helps bring mind and body together. But again, there are still parts of our brain, parts of our emotions and feelings that we need to work through. And so we have to separate from that physical connection for a bit to really focus on the mind first, tap into our feelings. What are we feeling? What is our awareness of what the things that we're thinking, the things that we're saying to ourselves in our heads that we're not even aware of, right? Because you see some people who physically look very healthy. They can
Mm-hmm.
run a marathon, they can do all the things, they eat very well, but you don't know that internally they're going through a lot of depression, or
Right.
internally they face fear, or they face a lot of anxiety. So these are things that we need to look at as well when we're talking about wellness.
Love it. Like it's a really well-rounded approach. And I heard you talk about like disrupting wellness, and I know that's another term you use, disruptive wellness. So is that essentially just a holistic approach to wellness as opposed to just staying on the surface, or how do you describe disruptive wellness?
Yeah, so how I like to describe and define disruptive wellness is really about pushing back on society's narrative of
Mm-hmm.
what wellness looks like, of how you should practice wellness, how you should engage in wellness, what is the correct form of wellness. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really about looking within and saying, what do I need in this moment to reach an optimal level of well being? And
Mm-hmm.
this is from a holistic perspective. What do I need spiritually, financially, career wise, relationship wise? With my body, with my food. So it's looking at it from a more holistic perspective. There's actually 12 elements of wellness. And it's saying, what do I need in that moment in these areas? And how can I achieve some level of balance? And balance doesn't mean that every area is at a 10 or every area is at a 5, but that you're working towards the numbers that you want to be at. So for
Mm-hmm.
instance, you might want to be at a 4 in food, but you might want to be at a 9 in spirituality. That's why everybody's wellness journey is going to be different and based on what their needs are. And remember, it's a journey. So
Yeah.
maybe right now you're just trying to get from a 2 to a 3. And once you've accomplished that, you can work on getting from a 3 to a 4, right? But who's to say how you should go about achieving that balance? You know yourself best, and you have to determine the things that work for you. I personally hate yoga. I do not enjoy it. My body does not move in such ways, and I am just not flexible. Okay. It doesn't matter how much times, if I do it in the hot, the cold, I don't like it.
I
So
hear you.
maybe once a year I can force myself. But if society says that this is a mainstream way that I should try to achieve well being, I'm not going to do it. Does that
Mm-hmm.
mean I'm not achieving a level of wellness? No, it means I should move my body in a different way, such as dancing or running on the treadmill or strength training, because I enjoy those forms of movement. And
Mm-hmm.
so that still allows me to reach the level of well being I'm trying to physically, right? So you have to do things that make sense for you, that align with who you are and what your values and goals are for your life.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Love that. And the part about just examining your own life and what you need at that point. You were mentioning some numbers, 3, 4. In your head, is there like a scale, like an objective way of measuring wellness?
So what I like to recommend to anyone is to start with a self-awareness. To start with self-awareness, you need to kind of audit yourself and see, well, where am I at right now? And I think the easiest way to do it is just from a 1 to 10, right? So you can write down the 12 elements of wellness. I also, on my Instagram, Natalie Mullin, in the link in bio, there's just a free assessment that anybody can download if they want to do this, or you can just do it on a piece of paper. You're going to write down the 12 elements of wellness. So it starts with the 6 external. This is food, body, air, rest, water, and sun. In my guide, I have some guiding questions, but you could just do the overall category. Internally, and I've mentioned some of them already, but I'll mention them again: mindset, purpose, spirituality, relationships, careers, and finances. And you're just going to write those down and you're going to say, where am I at right now? So as an example, with finances, am I comfortable with my income? Am I comfortable with my savings? And then I'm going to give myself a number between 1 and 10. And I'm going to do that for all 12 of the elements. And then I'm going to go back through it and I'm going to ask myself, where am I trying to get to? Like, what would be ideal for me? Because 10 is not everybody's ideal, right? Like, some people have an idea of what 10 looks like, but that might not be where they're trying to get to. They might be okay with an 8. Or maybe if they're at a 4, they're okay to get to a 5. They'd be happy to get to a 5. And then, because your goals can always change over time, right? And sometimes it can be too overwhelming to say, well, how am I going to get from a 5 to 10? Sometimes it's too much for people to even think about. So start small and do what works for you. And then see, okay, this is where I'm at now. So even if it's a 4 to an 8, and that's the gap that you want to bridge, what are the steps that we can now put into place? And this is where I come in, creating actionable, tangible steps and working with you based on your specific needs. How can we figure out how you can move from a 4 to an 8? But I never go 4 to 8. I work with clients to go 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8. And so that's something you can do for yourself to kind of assess your own wellness and make your own wellness plan.
Incredible. And do you move numbers by like focusing on one thing per time, essentially?
Yeah. So what I like to do with my clients is, once you've gotten all of your numbers, I like to look at where are you highest.
Okay.
Because sometimes we're critical on ourselves and we're like, oh my gosh, we just by default always go and look at our lowest numbers. But I want us to look, where are we highest, so that we can at least be proud of ourselves and be like, okay. And where you're highest doesn't mean like it's perfect, but it means it's highest. So it's just information. It's just data, right? So it's not judging yourself. You're just saying, this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And then I would say, okay, what's working for you in those areas, why you have such a high number? Now let's go look, where's the area you have the lowest number? And ask yourself, do you want to change this number? Because you might have the lowest number in food, but if you don't have the internal motivation or drive to change your food, I cannot do it for you. Okay, I am not God. I can't do for you what you don't want to do for yourself.
Right. Yeah.
But but when the data is in front of you, what it does is it causes you to make decisions.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times in life, people are indecisive. And when you're indecisive, you become stagnant. But stagnant is almost a lie, because if you're stagnant, you're actually regressing, because life is still moving forward. So we don't just get the option to just pause and stay still in life. So you have to make a decision based on the data. What would be the most meaningful for me to address? Some people can't immediately address the lowest number because there might be too many mental blocks that they have to still work through. So for some people, they're going to start with something maybe that they're in the medium level, and they're like, okay, it's easier for them. So this is on a very personal basis, and you have to know yourself, and you can work with a coach or work with whoever, but it's going to be different for each person. Some, like me, on the other hand, because I love growth, I'm obsessed with growth, I'm obsessed with improvement, I would immediately go to what is the lowest number and work towards improving it. But other people aren't like that. So that's why it matters what your personality is like, and you have to know that.
Such a thorough answer once again. Thank you. The pro in you, like the educator in you, is just coming out. Like the way you break it down, and you're also a teacher, right?
I am also a teacher.
You can see it and how you break things and concepts down. Thank you. That's incredible definition. I was thinking before this conversation, but it has also come up in it. Is wellness a privileged conversation? Is it something that only people who have gone beyond survival can begin to start thinking about? Because when you're thinking about your next meal, or like your next mortgage and where it's going to come from, or when life is life in perpetually and it feels like you can't even catch a break, how do you start to think about wellness in those seasons? What do you think about that? Is it a privileged conversation? Is it something that everyone at every stage can be thinking through, especially in the framework of what you've given about different things, like the 12 things to think about. It's not just one destination. But that's a lot I've thrown at you. I'll let you sit with it.
Yeah, you know what? I appreciate the question because I think that when we look at mainstream society and how society positions wellness, it comes from a privileged lens. I think that there's a lot of commercialization in wellness, and I think that there's a lot of materialism associated with wellness.
Yes.
So it's associated with products, with purchasing things,
Yes.
whether it's for the skin, it's like purchasing all of these different creams and serums and oils and this.
12-step
Or if
these
it's
processes, yes.
exactly. If it's food, it's like, oh, it's organic. It's this. It's from this place. If even if it's your movement, it's like, oh, it's Pilates, it's Legree, right? And these are kind of clubs that you have to go to spend money on.
Yes.
But I reject those ideas. Those are fine for those people, but I never want anyone to think they can't pursue wellness in and of whatever their circumstance is. Because as I said, for me, wellness is really centered first and foremost on the mind. And then how do we look at the rest of our life? So even with food, if your decision is between macaroni and cheese or tuna, like, and you were on the lowest of low income and you were getting food from the food bank, it's something you can still think about. And I really believe in understanding where you're at. If you're not at a place that you can afford expensive food, you do the best with what you have and you be proud in the moment for making a choice that even if 0.001% it makes your life better, be proud of that. That if you carry that guilt of, oh, I wish I could do this and I wish I can do that, that doesn't serve you. That doesn't help you. Get as close to the kind of freedom or as close to the kind of desired lifestyle you have with what you have right now, and just be appreciative. If you had to go to the food bank and they gave you macaroni, just be like, I'm appreciative because this is feeding my body today and giving me energy to make it through to the next day.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not for us to sit and debate, like, is this organic? Was it gluten-free? No, do the best with what you have. As I said, nature is there for us. We can all go outside and go for a walk.
Yeah.
So that's available. If you have mobility in your legs, then you can go out for a walk. And if you don't, how else can you access fresh air? Whether through opening a window and just looking outside, and even just looking outside and appreciating nature and slowing down and relaxing.
Right.
That is all a part of wellness, right? So just even having stillness. Sometimes we think of wellness as things that we are constantly doing, but actually a very large part of wellness is not doing anything at all. It is just being present, being still, being in the moment, being grateful, being conscious and aware of what we do have. And I mean, it can go, because sometimes in life you can feel like you don't have a lot, and I can understand that. But I really try to position my clients to think differently. And I had to do this for my own self too. Because sometimes you see other people around you, maybe they have more money or more opportunities, and you want to make changes in your life, and you're limited for whatever reason. But the way around it is to think about what do you already have.
Right.
And so I just say you go on an I have binge. So I could say, and you start off with because sometimes you really feel like you don't have, but everybody has something. So if it's as basic as I have 10 fingers, I can feel myself, I can see you, I have my phone, I have my laptop, I have a roof over my head, I have mobility over my two legs, I can wave, I can smile, I have teeth when I smile. Even those bare minimum things that we often take for granted, right? So even if you don't have bigger things than that, we can still start. And if you just keep going, you'll realize you actually have quite a lot. If you have family, you're so rich. There's so many people who wish that their family members were still here. They wish that they had a partner or a friend to call on, right? So sometimes we don't realize the abundance of things that we actually do have because we're so focused on what we don't have. And society kind of pushes us to always want more and more and more.
Yes.
But if we can really just be grateful for what we have, but you can't be grateful if you don't recognize it. So you have to recognize what you have, because a lot of people talk about gratitude, and I think gratitude is important. But before gratitude, there has to be the recognition of what do we even have in the first place, and then we can be grateful for it.
Yeah. Love that. And gratitude is it's like, so an element of wellness really is pausing to realize what you have and then being able to be grateful for it. And then going from there to embodying, like, to appreciating what you have and thinking about the other ways uh, you can take advantage of the resources available to you, whether that's sunlight, the body you have to move, or your mind and the peace you have, and using that to essentially gain a greater state of well-being. Thank you for that. I can't believe we've gone this far into the conversation without me like asking about your story and how you got into wellness. Like, what attracted you to this field, and how did you become passionate about it? Did you have any personal experiences that led you here, or what drew you to this field, essentially?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I never saw myself kind of coming down this path. So I have to take you back in time a little bit. But there was a point in life where I was doing what I thought was right. I was working full time. I had a side hustle. I started my own business. I was very outgoing. I was signing up for all the events. I was volunteering. I was working with all the people. Like, I felt at this moment so accomplished in life. I felt like I was doing all the things I was supposed to be doing that society says you're supposed to be doing. So I felt very productive. And it was starting to be a little difficult because I mean, my calendar, I was meeting people for like an hour and then meeting people in the car to get somewhere else and then meeting somebody else. Like, my calendar was just jam packed. It was ridiculous. And it was starting to take a toll, but like, you just kind of keep pushing through and you're like, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, because sometimes you're on the hamster wheel of life and you're not pausing, you're not aware of what's happening around you.
Yeah.
And then one day, I think it was a Tuesday, I just remember hearing my husband say something and it changed my life. And he said, I want a divorce.
Out of the blue.
And I remember out of the blue. And I remember sitting there and I'm thinking, like, what did he just say? And I remember asking, like, what other words rhyme with divorce? Trying to understand, like, okay, I must have heard wrong, right? And there's not a lot of words that rhyme with divorce, okay? So I wasn't coming up with anything. And I was like, my stomach just dropped, like, as it all the way to the floor. And in the moment, I was like, wait, what just happened? And yes, to an extent, I would have realized, like, okay, maybe we're not talking as much and spending as much time together. But again, I just chalked it up to every marriage goes through these times. But I was so busy going through life, doing my business, doing work, I didn't even realize how distant we had grown. And so in that moment, I had to pause. And I was really left with a difficult decision because he was not interested in working on the marriage at that point. And so when we separated and I was just kind of at rock bottom, I entered a great depression because this is all I wanted.
Wow.
And I was like, what was the point of me working so hard to end up losing my family? Like, this is what mattered to me most.
Right.
And I really had an epiphany at that moment. And I was like, this wasn't worth it. I went about this wrong because I've lost the number one thing that mattered most to me. And that was really humbling experience to kind of get to that epiphany. And I entered a really deep depression, and it was very difficult. There was a lot going on at the time. I had to move back. I had to move countries back to my home country. I had to close my business, say goodbye to all my friends and all of this stuff. And, when you get to a point where you're kind of stripped of everything, I felt very bare. I was like, I don't even know who I am anymore because my whole identity was connected to this role as being his wife and also just, being the business owner, having the job. And I lost all of it at the same time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so I was really just kind of like, I don't even know who I am anymore. But you can only stay in that darkness for so long because it's a dark place. I have no words to describe that level of darkness and pain.
Yeah.
But eventually I was like, okay, Natalie, I have to pull myself out. Like, how do I I just felt like I was at the bottom of a pit. Like, I fell into the pit and all my bones were broken and I was at the bottom. Like, I know it might seem dramatic, but that's truly how I felt.
Right.
And I said, how do I even start to like come back together, even just to become a person again? And so I had to spend all this time like rebuilding myself, figuring out my own self-worth. Like, what am I worth to myself outside of anybody else's value on me? Because obviously if your husband asks you for a divorce, that affects your self-worth and how you think about yourself,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Because you feel rejected. You feel like you're not lovable anymore. You're not
Yeah.
worthy. And so I had to establish my own self-worth outside of the worth that somebody ascribes or puts onto me. I had to love myself for me. And I had to appreciate myself and value my own worth. And so that was a process. But that's where it started. So it started with the self-awareness, and then I went into self-worth. And from there, I was really able to think, well, what do I even want out of life? And this whole process is actually what led me to create my reset formula, because this is now what I actually use with my clients, helping them. And I modify it for anybody I'm working with, because everybody's life is different. Everybody's situations are different.
Yes.
But after that, you think, okay, what do I want for myself? What is the vision? Right? And then you have to figure out what is the vision you want for yourself, and how can you start to move forward in a way to actually attain the vision you want. And most likely it's going to require some shifts in your life, shifts to the way you do things. So you're going to have to establish boundaries, right? And you're going to have to say, this is what is acceptable. This is what's not acceptable.
Yeah.
And then after you establish boundaries, you have to establish ways of processing life, ways of doing life that are going to be constructive to the goals that you have, constructive to the kind of person that you want to be. And then you have to embody that person, and you have to become that person before you even get there, right? Because you have to change your identity first. As I said, it starts with the mind. You have to change your mindset first. You have to believe that you can even assume a new identity. You have to believe. So me at the bottom of the pit has to believe that there's another Natalie that's outside of the pit that has already gotten over this. Right? Otherwise, you'll never get out. But you have to believe in it first, and then you adopt the mentality of, okay, well, that person who's already out of this, what did she do to get out of this mess? And how can I start to do those things? How can I start to bring joy? And so for me, I had to start with joy. How do I bring joy back to my life? Because I lost all sense of joy, right? How do I bring back balance? How do I bring back peace?
Yeah.
And then try to build myself from there.
Wow. Okay. Incredible story. And like it's like it's a major thing to have that sprung on you. Surprisingly, did you try to fight it? Like, hey, it's not that bad. Why do you want a divorce or anything like that? Or did you just
listen, I begged, I pleaded, I was on my knees, I cried so much. And I'm a pretty persuasive person, and you know, no matter how much I plead, again, something I learned in this experience though too is that you cannot control somebody else.
That's true.
You can only control yourself. And even though, and I'm a very logical person, and even though I could be logical and try to explain, well, we've been married for this amount of time, we should try all these things and these things and these things. Sometimes things are going on with another person that you just have no control over at the end of the day. And I think that's really hard for us to accept as people, but I think it's really important, because you can this is part of what sent me into the depression, is because I always felt at that point in life that if I tried hard, my efforts would shift things. And it is that experience that taught me. It has nothing to do with my effort. It has to do with me understanding what I can and can't control. And I cannot control any other person.
Right.
My husband, my child, my parents, my sister. It doesn't matter how close they are to me. Everybody has agency over their own bodies and over their own minds.
Yeah.
And also, you do not understand what's happening in other people's minds, what things they're battling and things that they're facing. So sometimes the situation has nothing to do with you directly, but it's being taken out on you. Right. And so and it can be very difficult to, when you want something to change and you can't. But the greatest lesson I learned from that was sometimes you need to let go. And the beautiful part of my story is that my husband and I are now reconciled. We have an almost 2-year-old son who's just the joy of my life. And I'm really grateful to God for bringing us back together. But also a part of it, why I believe we came back together, is because I finally got to a point where I accepted I can't control this, and therefore I'm releasing it. Because when you are holding on to something so tightly, you think that the power is within you. And there came a point where I was like, I can no longer mentally do this. It is too psychologically damaging and distressing. And there was too many negative thoughts of self-harm and just things that I couldn't be going down that path anymore. And I said, I can't do it. And I just completely let it go. And I said, you know, there is that phrase like let it go, and if it's supposed to be, it'll come back to you. And I know it
Right.
sounds cliche, but that's what I did. That's what I actually did. And I said, I just have to say goodbye. I can still be hopeful. I can still be hopeful. I can still pray, but I can no longer use my physical, like I can no longer try to take the effort to make this work, because all I'm doing is forcing something. And when you okay, I don't know if you've ever had a mango that wasn't ready yet, and in the Caribbean we use this term called force ripe. And you're trying to make the mango ready before it's time, and it never tastes as good as if it was supposed to just ripen on the tree. And it's the same thing in life. If you try to force a situation that even if the marriage was starting to work, he's going to resent me, right? Because he's going to feel like I was manipulative and was forcing him to come back into that.
Yeah.
So instead, it's like, go be free, go do you. I'm going to go do me. And when you let go, you'd be surprised how things can kind of come back together all on their own.
I'm so thrilled for you that it worked out, that you're back together, married with the same person. Very beautiful end to the, like, not end, but like, what was the end of the story? Very beautiful continuation of the story. Your story is still being written and it's going good by God's grace. And I'm thinking like that's a very big experience to have gone through as an individual and as a couple. And like now that you're a wellness educator and someone has gone through that experience, do you have tools in your arsenal now that you have as like guidelines for how to know that I'm still on track with this vision I set for my life so that things don't fall apart again? Do you have any tips you can pass on to the people?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I would say, you need to write down what it is you want. A lot of people think about what they want and then it kind of gets murky and they kind of forget. Put it on paper, because words confront you. And when you see it on paper, those words are truth. I remember actually my client just last week, she's like, I don't like what I see on the paper. Because she was writing about her experiences. She almost wanted to delete it because she's like, these words are confronting me. And she now has to sit with this truth of things that she's been thinking in her head about herself, but she's never put onto paper before. Right. And so now that was for a different activity. We were kind of working through an exercise with our negative self-talk, because our negative self-talk is what holds us back a lot of
right.
life. But one of the first things I do in the first week, when I have a 6-week coaching program. So I have 2 different ways people work with me. Sometimes they just come for one-on-one sessions and they're just working through a specific challenge, right? But then other people want to go through a whole wellness program because they're looking for an actual bigger transformation. They want to change their life. And so one of the first things we do is we create a dream life blueprint. And anybody can do this. You need to write down what is the life that you want for yourself. Who do you want to be? How do you want to live your life? Who do you want in your life? What do you want those relationships to look like? What do you want your career to look like? What do you want your finances to look like? And you need to put it on paper, right? And some people do a vision board, and that can be a part of it, but I think like try to get into more detail, right? And then put it on paper. I love suggesting people do it on like a Google Doc or something so that you can go back and make changes. Sometimes people write it down by hand, but then it's harder because we evolve over time. So what you think you might want this year might be different next year, or because as you learn, as you grow, you're developing. So I think a Google Doc is the fastest way to just be able to constantly be making revisions and changes as you yourself are growing. But put all of these things that you want. And I like to print it out, because then again, if you make changes, you just adjust on Google Doc and you reprint. And I like to put this list of who is it that I'm trying to become? What is it I want for my life? And then I would say you can work on some kind of vision board, because pictures are important. And the mind, when your mind sees a picture, it doesn't know if it's in the future or if it's your current reality. It just sees the picture. So it just assumes, right? So if you can see if the brain sees those pictures, it just assumes it's your current reality. And so it's more likely to bring you to that reality, because now it's just like, oh, look, you want this for yourself? Okay, let me try to go make that happen. I'm going to go make that happen, because you've given the brain direction of where to focus your attention. And what you focus your attention on is what you are going to get more of, right? And so that's where you're going to grow. It's the same if you focus on negative things. Well, guess what? You're going to have more negativity in your life.
Yeah.
So when you have that dream life blueprint, you have that vision board. The next thing is you've got to do accountability checks with yourself, or with a coach, or with accountability. That's why accountability partners are popular too. So you've got to share that dream with someone that you can trust, who's going to hold you accountable. And if you don't have anybody, you can do it with yourself, but just be careful, because sometimes we hold ourselves back. Actually, we can be our biggest downfall. So I would suggest finding somebody in your life that can hold you accountable, and check in, whether it's once a month or every 2 months, just something regularly, and say, am I going off balance? Like, am I going the direction of where I want? And also just stopping and saying, because there's two things. There's one about how am I trying to get to my goals and fulfill the goals and the kind of bigger person that I want to be. But there's also like a more just like, well, how do I feel in this moment? Like, do I feel stressed?
Yeah.
Because as I said, I never want wellness and thinking about our wellness in our life to be like this huge overarching big idea, because there's the simple individual moments too. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday I was at something for a work conference, and oh my gosh, it was just go. So we had a very, very long work day. Yeah. And then they're like, okay, we're going straight to dinner, and then we're going straight to the Blue Jays game. And I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, I need to breathe. And I remember saying, I'm going to be late for the Blue Jays game. I'm going to my room. And I went to my room, and you know what? I didn't make it to dinner, and I didn't make it to the Blue Jays game. I stayed in my bed.
Because you can do that.
Because I can do that. Because I give myself permission to honor my own well-being, and I'm no longer going to live that life of running ragged. It is not in alignment for me anymore. So in that moment, I literally just said, and so I didn't say no right away. I said I was going to be late, and I would let them know. And I just sat there and I said, how does my body feel? I said, my body feels tired. And I asked myself, how would I feel if I went to the dinner and I went to the game? And I said, I would feel I was doing it out of obligation. Right. And I don't do obligation. I do what is going to bring me joy. Yeah. And I would not be joyful. You know where I was joyful? In my bed in the hotel with my nice white sheets, and I was happy. And I stayed there, and I was so proud of myself that I could just spend the evening relaxing and just have that quiet time, because there was a time in my life where I would have gone straight to the dinner and then straight to the James game, and then probably something else after, because I used to be that person. But as I said, I know what it's like to go through that cycle, and it doesn't end well, and it can only go for so long before something gives. So I know to not put myself back there. And I remember speaking to my colleague the next day, and she's like, oh my God, it was so hectic. It was so chaotic. Like, you're so smart for not coming. So, you have to kind of listen to your own intuition and do those checks with yourself to see how do you feel, and then make adjustments and be true to yourself, and be willing to give yourself permission to do things to support your well-being and stand firm in it.
Incredible. And I'm just going to recap it so I'm sure I got it all. So write the vision clearly, make sure it's something you can keep editing it as you go, essentially, because your life is evolving. If you want, you can put it as a picture so that you can see it, and trick your brain in some instance to embody the self you want to be already. And accountability, whether that's somebody that can hold you accountable, try to get someone if you can, or yourself, doing regular check-ins, but then also evaluating every day against that ideal vision for your life, and adjusting as you go to make sure that you're pursuing wellness. As you were describing that, a couple of things stood out to me. First of all, there's a Bible verse that is in Habakkuk somewhere that says, write the vision, make it plain, that anyone that sees it will run with it. And it's so interesting that there are all these things that are nuggets of wisdom now that we are rediscovering. That they already exist there. They already are ancient truths that we have at our disposal. And I think the Bible also says that there is nothing new under the sun. I'm just going and quoting because there's so many things, and it's interesting that you're describing this, and it works, is what I'm trying to say. And as a second thing, I was speaking with another guest who, when he was 20 or so, wrote his legacy statement, as in what he wants people to say about him when he dies, his friends and family. And that essentially is his version of the vision statement. Am I doing things that take me away from how I want my life to end, essentially? And so in different ways, we're saying, get clear about your life's vision and live according to that. If not, you'll find that you're chasing somebody else's dream because you've never really checked in with yourself. And so brilliant.
I couldn't have said it better. And the thing is, so many people are living lives that are not driven by purpose. They are disconnected from their purpose. And because of that, there is a lack of meaning, a lack of fulfillment. And if you can tap into your purpose and find ways to use the talents and gifts that you have to serve others, you will live a more abundant life, and you will live a more purposeful and purpose-driven life.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of and that's what it's all about. And people ask me sometimes, like, what inspires me, and I always say the grave. And Miles Monroe, he's a pastor, and
Sorry, did you say the grave?
I know.
The grave. Okay.
I know it's not the answer you're expecting, but the reason I say that is Miles Monroe, he was a pastor. He's no longer alive, but he used to always say that he wanted to die empty. And I remember hearing this as a young child. I never forgot it. And what he meant by that is that so many people have all these ideas in their head. They have all of these things that they want to accomplish. They have all of these gifts and talents, but they hoard it, or they're scared to act on it. They're scared to try to make something a reality. They're not sure if they're going to do well. They're not sure if they're going to be successful. They don't know how to do it. So all of these things hold them back. And so what happens? They die full. Their cup is completely filled with all the potential that they never actualized. And that's why they say the grave is the richest place, because people die full of potential, full of ideas, full of just geniusness and brilliance, but they didn't tap into it. They didn't even try in a lot of cases. And I don't think that to me is one of the most saddest things in the world. Yeah. And I just cannot have that for myself. I need to know that I tried and that I lived my life with purpose the best that I felt that I could, and that I gave everything that I had for the time that I was here. Yeah. That to me is fulfillment, so that whenever my time comes, whether it's tomorrow or in 10 years, if I die tomorrow, I can die knowing I gave everything that I had.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I want to shift gears a bit to our world as it is right now. And I have two angles to this, but I'll start with something I've heard a couple Gen Z share with me. And it's this concept of perpetually comparing their lives to these ideals of their peers that they see on the internet. So I think, to quote someone who was having a conversation with me, she said, like, I feel this pressure to be successful, and I felt that way since I was a teen, because I'm seeing everyone's success and highs online. And I'm like, I see it too, but she's like, yeah, it's different because this is how we grew up. This is the normal that we see. And my answer to it was to try to do your best to ground yourself in reality, as in to have people around you that can call you to bring you back to order when you're going too much in the clouds, but then also to have real people that you interact with and understand the real struggles, because the internet is a highlight reel in many ways. But have you dealt with worked with any Gen Z clients or any people that are feeling that pressure to perform, or feeling like their lives are lagging behind because of the peers that they're seeing? And how might you address those kinds of concerns?
Yeah, and actually, I think it's not just Gen Zs. There are even millennials who are successful executives who still feel that pressure. Unfortunately, it's just something that society has placed on us, and that is especially prevalent because of social media. And, without social media, we wouldn't really know everything that's happening in people's lives. We only know about the people we talk to all the time, or we happen to live around us. But now it's like, about everybody's life that lives in completely different countries from you, or lives in completely different cities, people that you haven't seen in 10, 15 years. Yes. And so all of this you are absorbing as truth. And it's really dangerous because you have to live your truth. Yeah. And what you have to understand, and just like what you said about the highlight reel, social media is the truth that people put out, and it might not even actually be true. I cannot tell you how many people I personally know that if you look at the Instagram, you would think they have it all the way together. But let me tell you, baby, their real life is a hot mess. If you were to touch it, you'd burn your finger. Okay. Like, I remember one person in particular, as I was listening to some of the the challenges that she was going through, I was like, are you the same person? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand how there can be such a night and
Mm-hmm.
day. And so one thing I really like to suggest to clients is to do a social media detox. I'm not really, if I could, in an ideal world, I would say be off of social media altogether. And I would also take myself off of social media. But I understand that it is a tool that we can use in today's society, and it can be used for good. So let's work with social media. But who are you following? And how are they serving you? How are they helping you to have a better life, a better mindset, to feel more empowered, to feel more uplifted? And so I recommend that you do a social media audit. So I say go through everybody that you follow, and just as soon as you see their name, try to think about your body, because again, we want to connect the mind to the body.
Yes.
In that moment, do you smile and go, oh yeah, I like that account? Or do you go, oh, I wonder what they posted today, and you feel that kind of twinge of jealousy? And if you do, listen to that and press unfollow. Or if you don't want to unfollow them completely,
Mute
you can press
them.
mute. Just mute them so that they don't come up in your feed.
Yes.
So that, especially if it's people you know, right? Because we're not trying to cause
Yes.
drama in your life, okay? But just mute them so that you still have the ability to go back, because sometimes you can take people in doses, or you could take information in doses.
Yeah.
But when everything seems like it's going so well for someone, or they're living up to an ideal that maybe you want for yourself and you're not there, what happens is you start comparing yourself.
Yeah.
So you need to reduce the ability to compare yourself as much as possible. I used to have an Instagram account that I didn't follow anybody I knew on it. It was only like influencers and stuff. But it was influencers that I found inspirational, but not ones that I would feel jealous of.
Okay.
And so I just like looking at them. I didn't know anything about them. They didn't know anything about me. I knew I would never meet them in real life. So there's no need for me to be jealous. I don't know them.
Okay.
But yet, if I was to see my own personal friends on there and they were achieving certain things, I might feel a kind of way, right? So I made sure it was complete shit. Even my friends, somehow they found out I had the secret account, and they would send me a friend request, and I pressed deny, because I wanted this to be a pure space for me, where I wasn't going to be emotionally impacted by who I was following, but that they were just going to uplift me. And I remember there was one influencer in particular who I did realize I was starting to feel that little bit of jealousy and that twinge, and I just pressed mute. I was like, no, I don't want to bring in that energy. I want to curate, because we have power, so we can be curators of what do we take in that is going to uplift us and inspire us. And so I think that people need to be more intentional about the information that they curate. So who are you following on your social media, and who do you spend your time talking to? Like when you're on WhatsApp or you're on FaceTime or whatever, are you talking to people that are uplifting you, empowering you, and making you feel more joy, more peace? Or are you talking to people who are stressing you out?
Yeah.
Like one thing for me, as a part of my whole wellness and what's in alignment for me, peace. Okay. So if you are stressing me out, you are anti my peace, and therefore you are anti me, and therefore I just need to put you to the side.
Be my peace,
because
I am muted.
I am very protective of my peace, okay? I'm very protective of my energy and very protective of my joy. And if you are not in alignment with that, again, it doesn't mean I need to like close the door and not be friends with you or whatever, but it means I'm going to limit the access you have to me. And I'm going to limit the amount of time or interaction we have together, whether it's a person in real life or whether it's an account and, you know, it's somebody I don't actually know, but is online. You can curate that. And I think a lot of times we give away our power. And we need to spend more time, again, doing things that bring us joy. So when you're on Instagram, is it joyful for you? Like, are you actually enjoying, like, yay? Or are you just doing it because you're bored or you're just mindlessly scrolling? Better to use that time. Go do something uplifting and joyful for you. Go find an activity that you can actually be happy, instead of just like sitting there, like looking at other people. You're looking at other people living their lives while you're on the couch, not living yours.
So true.
Make it make sense. Make it make sense.
Yeah. Oh, so much to say here. My favorite quote has to be, social media is the truth that people want to share if it's true. Like, it's not even necessarily true. So it's so good. Love it. I enjoy social media. So I know I'm one of the people that spend a lot of time over there, but at the same time, I curate my feed so heavily. if I feel like I'm beginning to see my friends less. Like I want to see my friends' life, and then I meet all the people that I don't really want to see their lives, and then I see the people I want to see some more. And mute is such a powerful button. Like you don't have to unfollow them because maybe you want to see their stuff in the future, but like mute people so at least if you spend so much time there, it's curated. And I know ideally it's good to spend time in the sun, like you're saying, I know your screens. So it's kind of finding that balance. Thank you. Such a lovely, detailed answer. I love it. On the flip side, or not on the flip side, a different angle to the circumstances of our world and how they affect wellness. You said on your website that you work with ambitious women and to find joy and like to ambitious, stressed women. I think that's how you said it. And I thought it's very interesting because there are a lot of things that are causes of stress. If you're ambitious and you're putting ambition into a career, you feel the struggle between growing your career and like spending more time in nurturing the family or kids and things like that. And if you tilt anyway you tilt the scale, there is stress because if you spend too much time on one, you feel like the other one is going to suffer. There's the guilt and all of that. But we also live in a world where there are structures that are no longer there. Some people say, where's the village that's supposed to help you raise these children? Like they're no longer there as because we're in cities. Some of us have immigrated away from family and like it's just hard. So where is the balance in life in dealing with the lack of structure, dealing with guilt if you do, if you don't, it's just there all the time. Where does one find joy and relieve some of the stress with what we have?
Yeah. So this is a layered answer, and it is going to be different for each person, but I am going to give two things. I hope I remember them both. So let's talk about, let me talk about the mindset first, okay?
Okay.
And when we think about balance does not just come. It's not like you don't just go to the grocery store and say, okay, balance is here. Let me just put that in my cart. I'm going to check out and go about my business. You have to create the balance. And the balance is not like necessarily level 50-50 like this all the time, but it's just a way of, I would say it's almost like a balance like this, that you can manage the things in your life in a way that are sustainable. So some days the scale is going to tilt higher and some days the scale will tilt lower. And that's a part of the balance. It's not going to be the same every day because life is just not like that. But there are things that you can intentionally do. You can structure your time in such a way. You have to think about it from the perspective of what do I want the most? And you have to be able to accept that you might not be able to have it all at the exact same time. And something might have to give. So remember I told you, I am focused on my joy. I'm focused on my family. Those are my priorities. So time with the people that I love, because remember, that's the lesson I learned through all of this. So I know crystal clear. So if too many things are starting to impact my time with the ones I love, then I'm like, okay, something's got to go off that end because it cannot come off of this end. So you might have to say this can't get done today or this can't get done this week. And you have to be okay with that. I think what's hard about when people are trying to achieve balance is because they're not willing to let something go. They want to do everything and still have everything. And that is what becomes difficult. The only way to achieve balance is to realize you're going to have to establish boundaries. You're going to have to say no to some things, or you're going to have to find other ways to get things done. So, and this is why I say it is a bit personal because like when I'm working with clients, I have to understand their unique lived situation. And like your situation and how we would bring balance to your life might be different from how I would bring balance to my life. Yeah. But in general, you can look to see how can you get more support. So this kind of ties into the second part. Yes, there are structures in society that are maybe set up in a certain way or that are not set up in a certain way. But what can we do that's within our power to make society work for us or to implement structure? So one thing is like we can outsource things.
Yes.
And some things are going to work for others. Some things work for some people and some things don't. Because I am aware that some things cost money. Some of these suggestions I'm going to make cost money, right? So I understand that can be a barrier for some people.
Yep.
So if it can be afforded, you can outsource cooking, right? Like you could order in food or you could do meal planning, Or you could do the type of cooking. So for instance, one of my friends, she just started doing Hello Chef or Good Food, like those kinds
Right.
of things. So you're still cooking the food, but she doesn't have to go shopping for it. It just comes to her door.
Or think about
Right.
what to
So,
eat. Yes.
or think about what to eat, because even that mentally is tiring, right?
Yes.
And think, oh, what do I have? How am I going to
Yeah.
put it together?
Yeah.
This one, you just follow the recipe. It's there for you.
Yep.
So that alone frees up not just time, but it frees up mental energy. And
Yeah.
this is something I work on a lot with my clients. I actually had them do a time energy audit to understand what are the things that are taxing our actual mental energy, not just mental, but other kinds of energy too, that are taxing our energy that we can free up as well. Because a lot of times people just look to what's taxing our time,
Right.
but energy matters just as much. And so you can outsource. You, for instance, sometimes people hate cleaning the house. Maybe you're going to hire a cleaner, but even if you don't, maybe you'll get that little, like the iRobot type vacuum thing that's at least going to make it easier because it's going to vacuum the house for you, right? Or some people still don't use a dishwasher, such as myself, but maybe you're going to use a dishwasher. So it just depends on like what is your situation when it comes to childcare. And I know because I have a little one, right? I have my parents who are able to help out, but they're not available all the time. So guess what? I asked a family friend, can she be a babysitter? And if I find someone I trust, I'll ask them like, hey, if I ever need you, would you be potentially available that I could drop my son off?
That's
And
so
I
good.
see how they respond. So I've been deliberately trying to build my village to not just be my parents, because they can't do it all. And my husband and I can't do it all ourselves too. So sometimes you have to build that village, and it might not just be family members, it might be friends too. Right. And you do have to be careful in the society that we're in. And I understand that. Growing up in a church community, our church community was like our family community too.
Right.
So we used to have a lot of church members that used to help out. Or you might use camps or programs from the city as a type of childcare, right? Where you drop your kid off for an hour or two and try to go get something done and then come back. I know that some parents, they do kind of child swapping. So especially this is very popular with single moms. So one mom will say, okay, I'm going to take the kids. They have their own kids and they're going to take a friend's kids this day. And then they swap and the other day, so that they kind of give each mom still get some time to themselves.
That's amazing.
So sometimes it's just about being creative in the ways in which you do things. Grocery shopping is another pain point. So now we have Instacart, or you have grocery pickup and delivery. So again, you have to see what's going to work for your life and what's actually going to address the pain point. Because if it doesn't bother you, there's no point in putting resources towards that solution. And that's why you have to do so much of that early work to figure out where is my energy and time being drained and how can I implement a solution to then achieve balance.
Wow. Incredible. As you were talking, so many other questions just kept popping up in my head, and I'm like, I could go on for another hour if I needed to, for sure, because there's lots of angles to take this to. And you've been such a wonderful guest with lots of suggestions everywhere. So thank you for generously sharing. As we wrap up, what do you see as your legacy in this space of wellness? Like, where would you like to see the world in an ideal state? And like, if your work is successful, what does it look like for the world?
I love this question. I've never been asked this before, but I know the answer. I want people to give themselves permission to live their lives in a way that is beneficial to them and in support of their well-being. I think a lot of times people are ambitious and they're focused on things, but they never consider how their well-being is impacted by the things that they're ambitious about. And I think we need to hold our well-being just as high as we hold the goals that we have for our lives. And we need to give ourselves permission to say it is okay to choose peace, to choose joy, to choose rest. I don't need to explain it to anybody. These are positive qualities. These do not hurt anybody. These do not take away. This only adds to my life. And the more that people feel empowered to kind of live in alignment with their values and their goals, I think they will live more fulfilling lives, more joyful lives, and more inspirational lives for others, and bring other people into it, because people feel guilty and I don't know why. So we have to change our mindset and really recognize that we deserve and we should be thriving. That is truly what I feel like all of us are we're supposed to have abundant lives, but for some reason we don't believe it. Remember I told you about identity. If you don't believe that you are worthy of having an abundant life, you will never receive it. You will never claim that. So it's about changing that mindset to believe what you are worthy and deserving of having. And then the confidence to go live that out and to take action to support the kind of life that you actually want, so that whenever your time comes, you can feel like, okay, I lived a meaningful, fulfilling life and I am happy. I am at peace and I am joyful for how I lived my life. It breaks my heart when people just go through life without joy. And I just want us to have more joy.
Yes, I say to myself, no joy, no gain. Like, what's the point of doing this with no joy?
What's
Love
the point?
that, Natalie. This has been incredible, and I have enjoyed speaking with you so much. Where can people find you and your work? / is there anything you want to plug that you're currently working on and would like people to support you on?
Okay, so if you're looking for me, you can find me. I have a podcast as well, so it's called From a Full Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So you can subscribe. I'm on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all the things. On Instagram, I'm Natalie Mullin. I am really working to be on there, and I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are just interested in just talking about maybe a particular wellness challenge that you're going through, or you're not sure if getting some support might actually be helpful for you. You resonate with the message I'm sharing about more time, more joy, more rest, and you're just not sure how to actually get it and how to achieve that balance in your life, then please send me an email and we can just book a call and chat. And let's see if we can come up with a next step for you forward. And I would also be happy to share the coaching offers that I have and see if they would be a good fit for you.
Okay. And what's your email?
And my website. Yeah, so my email is natalie@fromafullcup.com.
Okay.
And my website's nataliemullin.com. So that's Natalie, Natalie, Mullin, Mullin.com. And you can just send me a message. I'd be happy to chat with you and just see if I can offer any support or guidance. But I encourage you to take action. I am obsessed with helping women dream big, take action, and move the needle forward in life.
This has been incredible. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy and for your insights as well. Looking forward to is it a weller world? What's a good way to describe that? To a world that is well. Oh, geez, I need a better closer than
Oh, I like that. A world that is well. That's okay.
well, that is what it is.
So that's it for this week's episode of Dear Fopsy. If you're listening on a podcast platform or watching here on YouTube, be sure to subscribe or follow, depending on which one applies to you. Now, it's very important because I don't want to start having guests ask me, oh, how many subscribers do you have before they come on the show? Although that's a story for another day. Perhaps the people that are asking those questions are maybe not even the right fit. Why am I shading potential guests before they even come? Anyways, please subscribe. It supports my channel, feeds my ego, encourages me, all of that good stuff. So thank you for subscribing. It's free. Also, there's so much more where this came from. I have other stories of resilience that I have covered in the past that you should totally stick around to watch and listen to. And if this inspired you and there's something that really stood out to you and you're just like, oh my God, I want to share this with someone, absolutely take that link, send it to a friend, put it in your story. It helps this podcast find a new audience and I appreciate you for doing that. But also leave a comment. The point of being able to see me if you're watching on YouTube is that you can interact with me, so I appreciate it if you do. And if you're listening on the pod, we love you too. You all are the villain beef because I know you listen to the end for sure. All right, until next time, please be sure to subscribe, like, leave a comment, and share this with a friend or two.